welcome to another episode of Read With Me. I'm yours truly, Isabel Bedell, and I'm here to read with you. We are going to be diving into a really great chapter. I'm really excited about it. It's chapter 9 of Invent It, Sell It, Bank It by Lori Greiner. We've been reading this entire book for the month of abundant April, and it's held up its own value. Let's put it that way. Coming from an online space and then getting a glimpse of what the physical businesses have to go through when it comes to manufacturing and packaging and negotiations and actual prototypes and all of that. It gives a sense of huge gratitude to the people that don't have to go through that. So I really appreciate the reinforcement that we are all going through something, whether you think that you don't know what you're doing and you have no idea what to do. Just know that there's people out there that are doing something a lot more challenging than you, and that you shouldn't feel defeated. You shouldn't feel like you don't know what you're doing, because at the end of the day, it's the people that stop learning that don't know what they're doing. Let's be real. All right, let's get into it. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation, by the way. But anyway, let's dive right into driving the business. Nothing is impossible. The word itself says, I'm possible. I love that. That's by Audrey Hepburn. The phone call that really changed everything for me was the one I made to the corporate offices of JCPenney in Plano, Texas. There, I spoke with an extraordinary nice man named Paul Clark. He listened to what I had to say. I did my fast pitch and said, I'll be in Plano next week. And I asked him if he could meet with me at his office at JCPenney's headquarters. Days later, I was standing in his office demonstrating how my earring organizer worked and pitching everything that I had. When I was done, he informed me that he loved my product, but that each individual JCPenney buyer made his or her own purchasing decision. The retailer's buying policy has since changed. Then he made me a deal. If I could sell my organizer to all 12 JCPenney stores in the Chicagoland area, and it did well in the fourth quarter, which is October, November, December, he would take it nationwide. It was August. First quarter orders are usually put to bed in April. After thanking Paul Clark, I left his office so excited because I knew no matter what, I was going to meet his challenge and get every Chicagoland store. The next day, I started calling. I called every single JCPenney store within the 100-mile radius. I did my mini pitch over the phone. Those same sentences. Hi, I'm Lori Greiner, and I have the coolest earring organizer ever. Same as always. With that added line that I had met with Paul Clark in Plano headquarters, and he thought I had something they wanted to see. I got appointments. I did my pitch, and every single store bought. Okay? You're never done. Now, I had to make sure that the sales were so good that Paul would jump at the glance to take me nationwide. All I was required to do was ship my product to the stores and wait for the sales results. But there was no way I was going to stand idly by and hoping for the best. Surely there was something else I could do to ensure that everyone who walked past the display of the earring organizer would actually stop and take a closer look. So I decided that the best way to sell the organizer was to show everyone what it actually could do. It was a hard product to display because a clear polyester is transparent and doesn't show well on its own image. So I hung the prototype with 50 pair of beautiful color coordinated earrings in all styles and sizes. And every weekend I would bring it in to 2 of the stores of the Chicagoland area. I spent Saturday in downtown Chicago and Sunday in Schaumburg. The following weekend, I spent Saturday in Vernon Hills and Sunday in Buffalo Grove, and so on. I'd find a little spot next to where the store had displayed the organizer, and from the minute the store opened to when they locked the doors at night, I would actually do the demo. Over and over, I would catch people's eyes and say, "Look, isn't this cool?" And I would slide the loose stands back and forth and back and forth and open the drawer and show them how great it was and why they needed it or why it would be the greatest gift. It was the coolest earring organizer ever, right? People noticed and they stopped and they'd watch me and then they'd buy. And then when traffic would slow down, Dan would often sidle up and start exclaiming about how interesting that organizer was. And I could tell him more about it. That would bring people over quickly. People are naturally curious and no one ever wants to miss out. So I sold about 80 to 100 organizers a day. Every weekend. I did this throughout the holiday season, and when it was done, I had beaten up the quota. Paul Clark set out for me. He kept his promise to take me nationwide, and that sprung my invention. And that spring, my invention was actually selling at every JCPenney across the country. That's so awesome, Lori. That's great. My philosophy is that you can do anything if you put your mind to it. That's right, girl. That's right. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. Many in the retail industries might say that conceiving, pitching, manufacturing, and shipping a product to stores in a handful of months requires a miracle, but I had no choice. I knew the holiday season was peak sales season, and if I didn't hit it, I'd have to wait a whole additional year. I believed I could make anything happen. I just needed to figure out how. It was hell, but I was so excited. I was like a woman possessed. I like that one. It was hell, but I was so excited and I was like a woman possessed. And when the doors did start to open, I didn't slow down. I pushed ahead even harder. You have to keep driving your business forward. You want to keep your hands on the steering wheel so that when challenges arise or problems occur, you can take it where you want or need to have it go. But now I had a problem. I couldn't be in 1,200 stores to demonstrate my product, yet I knew it was important for people to be able to quickly see and understand why it was so cool and unique and how it worked. Then I realized, though I couldn't be in every store, a model of the organizer could be. An organizer sitting on the counter with earrings hanging from it would sell the packaged product and would attract a lot more attention. I went to the craft store, bought thousands of gold-colored beads and jewelry wire and got to work making pretty but inexpensive pairs of earrings. Mind you, while gold and shiny, they were just plastic balls. No one was going to want to steal them. I hung about 8 pair per unit, twisting the jewelry wire around the rods with tweezers so that they couldn't easily fall off. My fingers killed. I made over 1,000 individual earrings for the displays. Then I packaged the store displays in its box, taped a big note to the top and said, "Store display, please place on jewelry counter," and placed one in every master carton of my product that was heading out to the stores. I did it myself because I felt it was important that every store got their sample, and I was going to kill myself if I found out that all of those hours twisting wires and needles, nose pliers were for nothing because the displays didn't make it out onto the floor. The retailers put the display out and it helped my product sell even though I couldn't be there to do a demo. Dan and I would go to the stores out in our area to make sure the displays were out and help from time to time, continuing with an occasional live demo on the weekends. When you get an order, your work should not end with the shipping your product to the store. There is more to be done. I agree. There's more to be done. You should check periodically on how your product is displayed, where it's displayed, and that everything is going well. When we get my Shark Tank entrepreneurs into stores, there's always checking to see if their products are displayed and making sure that everything is right. And of course, taking photos as a proud parent would. That's what's driving the bus That's what driving the bus looks like. It's about making sure that you've got control over your product and over your destiny every step of the way towards accomplishing your goal, which is to sell successfully. Things get exciting. Things really got exciting. I expanded from JCPenney and got into Marshalls, Fields, Linens and Things, Kohl's, and Carson Peary Scott, to name a few, as well as several catalogs along with QVC. I was so excited about each new store we'd land as I'd been about the first one. Relationships matter. One of the most important things as for any entrepreneur or anyone in business, what you can do is to know the people that you work with. It's stunning how few people do this. I suppose that's because it takes time to get to know someone, to find out how many kids they have, what they like to do on the weekends, and what teams they root for. Time is money, and time talking about which is superior, a crusty deep dish Chicago style or a pizza thin flimsier slices preferred in New York, can be time away from immediate concerns of your business. But it's time well spent, maybe some of the best investments possible, because one day you will need to rely on these people to solve a problem or to help you meet a special order, and they will have a choice. They could choose to step up, maybe beyond the parameters of their job, and make sure your problem is solved, or they could actually continue on as usual and let you fend for yourself. If you've made your business, if you've shown them that you appreciate how hard they work and have treated them with respect, kindness, and care, there is a much better chance that they will want in turn, make your business their business and value its success almost as much as you do. Building friendships and finding advocates at every level in business ensures that you need them. People are willing to help you fight your battles because they believe in you and want you to succeed more than once. The effort I put into building relationships helped me avert major crises. In fact, if I hadn't done it, my very first order for JCPenney might have ended in disaster. A crisis averted. The first manufacturer I used was housed in an old factory that had been around for almost 100 years. One of those places where you can still feel the ghost of our industrial past and the generations of men and women who worked there. Like many U.S. manufacturers, the company had experienced a slowdown in recent years, so the arrival of new business was welcome. I liked them. They were good guys. I spent a lot of time talking with them in their offices, learning about the company. I would go down to the factory almost every single day, making sure that everything was running smoothly and building relationships with everyone working on my product. From the foreman to the press operator to the people packing the product to the guys fixing the tools in the tool room. In addition, I found that being so involved and learning so much as I could about the factory work meant that when things went wrong, I was able to actually do something about it. Seeing your finished product come off the product line in the first time is such a thrill. Here it is, your baby, your physical embodiment of the idea that you've been working so hard towards for so long. I was so excited. I couldn't wait for the day my first organizer came off the presses. I stood on the factory floor at the end of the conveyor belt and it let it roll to me. I picked up the organizer and automatically started moving the stands to see how they slid, and they stuck. That was not good. Plastic often shrinks and expands heat and pressure, and then the molds often need to be tweaked when they're brand new. That's what had happened here. Not to worry though, the tool maker assured me it would only take 3 weeks for him to fix the mold, and then my product would be perfect. This was not okay. I didn't have 3 weeks though. I only had 1 week. In 1 week, my product was supposed to be packed and shipped to JCPenney so it could hit the shelves. Some people think that the best way to get what they want is to pull power trips or get aggressive. But not only is that kind of behavior unnecessary, it's also counterproductive. I agree with you so much, Lori. Thank you so much for saying this. I'm definitely not the person to be aggressive in the confrontation side of things. I hate confrontation. So I love the fact that, you know, this whole situation just happened. And I love that she's like, some people think that the best way that to handle this was to do some kind of power trip or get aggressive. But that's not only unkind behavior, it's totally unnecessary, but it's also counterproductive. And even if you have some power, you don't want people to do what you want them to do out of fear or because you're making their life miserable. You want them to work with you to solve a problem because they believe in what you're trying to accomplish and because they feel like they're part of a team. Yeah. The factory and the tool maker understand how purchase orders and retailers work, and they know how critical deadlines are for the holiday season. So I try to persuade the tool makers to fix the mold with lightning speed. I pointed out that if the product did well, the factory would do well as well. I could also make more products and he would make the tools for them. I shared what it would mean if instead of manufacturing enough product to fill the shelves in 12 JCPenney's, they were manufacturing to fill products for the shelves of hundreds of JCPenney's in order to in addition to the other smaller retailers that were already about to carry my organizer. How much more profit would that translate into? How many more hours could they offer their employees? How many more jobs could they provide to the community? That's how you set it up. I love that. I didn't ask him to bend over backwards for me out of the goodness of his heart. I asked him to help me because if we could get this done, we all win. And on top of that, I begged. He knew I was a brand new entrepreneur and he realized how much this new business meant to all of us. This was my first product order, and if anything went wrong, I might never get another chance like this again. So I laid my heart out and appealed to his sense of compassion. He got it, and the tool was fixed in a week. Always explain to people why you are asking them to do things for you, especially when you are asking them to rush in order to go out of their way. I'm going to highlight that and I'm going to re-say it because sometimes, especially people like myself that are constantly thinking of things and I expect things to be done by yesterday, sometimes I might not share why it's so important, why it's such a big thing, you know? So always explain to people why you are asking them to do things for you, especially when you are asking them to rush in order to get it to go out of their way. No one likes to be ordered around, but when people understand why you're saying, hey, I need this done by tomorrow or get it done in the next 2 weeks, they're often willing to help you to drive the bus. This kind of communication and trust and building is an important element of business. I love that. Be proactive to solve problems. That wasn't the end of my problems, unfortunately. As the mold was being tweaked, the first shipment of boxes arrived so that the factory workers would actually start packaging the organizers and loading them into the master carts to be shipped out to the warehouses. One look and I knew there was trouble. The black ink bled and smeared all over the photo of my earring organizer on the front, top, and side panels. 25,000 boxes, and you couldn't tell what was supposed to be inside of any of them. It was a disaster. What the heck? That's crazy. We only had 2 days before we had to ship out to the stores. I called the printer and they said they'd return the boxes and I'd have them in order a week. This wasn't going to work. I needed to get them corrected immediately. Production was running. The goods needed to be packaged. The product could not just sit there stacking up in the factory unboxed. The order needed to get out. I jumped in my car and drove 3.5 hours to Wisconsin, where the printer was located. Inside, I was frantic. I needed my boxes now, but I tried to stay as calm as possible. I marched into the factory and I showed the foreman the ruined boxes. Surely he could see that this was not salable, especially when this was the first time JCPenney had ever done business with me. I then used the same line of reasoning that I did with the manufacturer to explain to him why it was in his best interest to return the print run and reprint my 25,000 boxes now. Once again, I begged. This was my first order ever. The printer wasn't a crook. The printer wasn't a crook. When I had picked up the phone and explained that he had sent me an unacceptable product, he had agreed to rerun the order. But first, he had wanted me to send him a sample overnight. And then he would have to put it on the press the following week. In other words, he would have gotten to it when it conveniently fit into his production run. But because I drove right then and there, and I drove straight to him and was standing right in front of him, he had to make a priority. He could probably see that it would take nothing less than a forklift to move me out of the way. And maybe he even felt sorry for me. He finally agreed to start the print run over immediately. Within 24 hours, 25,000 beautiful black boxes were ready to be shipped overnight to the factory so I could meet my deadline. That's how I operate. At the first hint of a problem, I try to be proactive. I'll jump into my car at the moment notice for a face-to-face meeting. I'll even get on a plane if I have to. That's the nature of an entrepreneur. From the beginning, you have to be willing to do anything within your power to make things happen when needed. This is how you get business done and how you get ahead. I'm going to highlight that whole thing. That whole thing, baby. That whole thing. So freaking good. So freaking good. I love how she's like, that's how I operate. There are no no's. Okay, there are no no's. This means years later, I was faced with another manufacturing conundrum. I had invented a new product called the fillable. It was a big clear bowl in which you could fill the side walls with different decorative pieces like candy, beads, and dried flowers. The parts were clear, like my polyester organizer, but because of its design, it had an inner smaller bowl and an outer larger bowl that needed to be glued together invisibly. We had to figure out how to successfully adhere the parts without ruining the aesthetic of the product. The only solution would be to use a completely new manufacturing process that would actually involve a special kind of glue and press the pieces together so fast and hardly they could adhere before the glue dried. My factory had never done anything like this. Yet, as far back as my first earring organizer, every product had always presented a problem. And each time we had to put our heads together and figure out how to work around it. I knew we could figure this out. There had to be a way. In this case, however, everyone from the manufacturer tooling experts to their engineers to their factory workers said that what I wanted to do couldn't be done. Finally, I thought about what a glue expert. So we found one, and sure enough, he figured out what to do. In the end, the solution was to build an ultraviolet light gluing assembly line with a conveyor belt that carried the parts at the exact speed for the parts to go under the light and adhere perfectly without ruining the crystal clear transparency of the bowl. That fillable became an overnight sensation, making its way into hundreds of thousands of homes and earning a spot as one of the QVC's top 5 selling items that year. We also got into Michael's craft stores for my own air demo at QVC. I decorated 35 different bowls so people could see all the different things you could actually do with them. I filled them with everything I could think of. It took me weeks. My entire home was strewn with different candies, pastas, beads, and dried flowers. I made a Halloween bowl, a Mardi Gras bowl, a pasta bowl, macaroni spirals, and rotini. I made a bowl filled with lavender, rosebuds, and dried flowers. I made a bowl after a bowl. They look gorgeous. The packaging was gorgeous, and we filled 100,000 fillables in Michael's in the first 6 months alone. It was one of the top sellers in all the stores that year, and we were all so glad we'd hung in there and resolved that gluing problem. That's strong. That was a really, really great visual. Lay the groundwork. There is a common theme in these stories. It's not just what you do in the heat of the moment that can save you from a disaster, but what you've done in the days when the disaster hits. That line was good. That's really, really good. The groundwork for your business lies just as much in the attention you pay to the people you work with as it does in perfecting the details of your product. The strength of your relationships will directly affect how well you're able to get your bus back on track if things go awry. It's possible you can catch problems and fix things all by yourself, but it's a lot easier with the goodwill and cooperation of others. You must remember that in addition to paying attention to your direct reports to the people in power, you need to pay attention to all the individuals behind the scenes who make your business possible. A huge part of my philosophy is always to try to treat people respectfully and nicely. I see it as a homage to my parents, my grandfather, and all of whom lived by the same principle. One of the things that I loved and admired most about my grandfather is how he treated everyone the same. He would talk and joke with a janitor in the same exact way as he would with a CEO. He had time for everyone. He instilled in me the philosophy that it doesn't matter who you are or what you have. What matters is what kind of person you are. I like that. I like that a lot. Kindness and consideration. The manufacturing plant was located in a Hispanic neighborhood in Chicago. Many of the employees who worked there didn't speak English well. Fortunately, I spoke passable Spanish. The plant ran 24 hours a day. I would come in almost every single day and often in the evenings too. Sometimes we would get an order that would overwhelm the factory and would not be able to make the products as quickly as the store wanted. Sometimes there would be an outbreak of colds or flu, during which the factory would lose a handful of employees per shift. We were lucky that the product was doing so well on QVC, but deadlines could be so tight, it meant that sometimes there wouldn't be enough time for the factory workers to shrink wrap everything to get the product out as urgently as needed. When these situations occurred, I found that it was helpful if I came to help out, to lend a hand. So Dan and I would come in at midnight and walk around and around the pallets with what amounted to a tremendous roll of saran wrap. God bless Dan. He was always there by my side when I needed it. Once we shrink wrapped 300 pallets in a weekend just by ourselves. A factory floor is no picnic. Wow. Once they actually shrink wrapped 300 pallets in a weekend. Wow, that's a lot. A factory floor is no picnic. At this one, the hot injection molding presses were located on the first floor and generated a lot of heat. And the heat rises, as we all know. The factory was not air conditioned. Oh, in the summer, on particularly hot days, the factory could get close to 100 degrees on the second floor, where the assembly line to package my product was located. Chicago summers can be hot, so everyone was dripping with sweat, working hard, checking details, trimming edges, and packing product. It was super uncomfortable, but unbelievably, we would all get used to it. Ugh. I felt bad because it was so hot. I brought in fans to help cool the space, and I tried to have a lot of ice cold drinks and special treats available to make the heat more bearable. I wish the factory could have been air conditioned, but as I said earlier, it was almost 100 years old. The women who worked so hard on my product during those hot days were amazing. They touched my heart and soul. I love them till this day. We were on this journey together. One of the most touching byproducts of doing what little I could to make these women work days more pleasant was that they became protective of me. Every now and then I'd get a phone call in the middle of the night, and in Spanish, someone who was working the night shift would say, "Hola, Lori," and then tell me that there was a quality issue with what they were packing. They'd tell me to come in the next day, ask to do a surprise inspection and look for boxes with a line drawn on them. Those were the boxes that I should open. I was so moved that they cared enough about me that they would take the risk of contacting me because they wanted to make sure that I was getting a good product. They trusted that I would never betray them. That's what's up. That's what's up. Get a team. Get a team. It was a two-way street. I cared about them and they cared about me. Sure enough, when I do the inspection the next morning and open up a box with a line drawn on it, inside would be organized with slight scratches where they had something else wrong with them. Immediately, the foreman and the factory owners would apologize for the oversight and promise to redo the order. I never stopped letting the factory workers know how grateful I was for the way they looked out for me. To this day, I'll never forget the work ethic of a night foreman named Andy. He worked for the second shift of the factory. He looked like Popeye. He had served in the Navy and wore a crew cut. His arms were covered in tattoos and he rolled up his cigars up in his shirt sleeve. His hands were like workman hands, rough, covered in oil and grease. He was salt of the earth kind of guy and one of the nicest, most caring people who worked at the factory. He often worked fixing the injection molding presses, which are enormous machines that clamp together with tons of force while pushing molten plastic into the nooks and crannies of the mold. They're hot and unwieldy, and they can have really sharp metal pieces. One night, I saw Andy fixing one of the machines, and I stopped to say hello. All of a sudden, he let out a yell, and when he pulled out his hand out of the machine, blood went flying. I started hunting for a clean rag to use as a tourniquet and shrieked, "We have to get you to the ER," but he replied, "Nah, I can leave. I can't leave." Ignoring him with ignoring him, crazy with panic, I kept talking while hunting for a tourniquet. It was a bad gash. "Andy, you're bleeding. You're gushing all over. I can't find a rag." And I started to think I'd have to rip my own shirt. He said, "Calmly, I'll be fine." Pulled out a blowtorch and categorized his own hand. What? I stopped only long enough to pull in another huge gulp of air and then started screaming. "My God, you're burned." "This is so crazy. We have to get you to the hospital now." And he looked at me with the faintest grin and drawled, "Nah, I do it all the time. Plus, I can't leave my team all alone. I gotta look out for them." Andy died several years ago, but often when I look back, when I think about his dedication and devotion and about all the teams he had in the early days, I'm overwhelmed by the fabulous working spirit of these individuals who I came to know and love. Wow, that's wild. Face issues head on. Okay. You've got to be kind and considerate and appreciative, but you've also got to be tough in business. I try to promote a team-oriented culture and even a sense of family at every level of my business, but I try not to let my personal feelings cloud my judgment when it comes to making decisions in the best interest of my company and my products. Once after yet another surprise inspection revealed imperfect products getting ready to be shipped out to retailers, I called a meeting with one of my factory owners. We decided to have it on the loading dock. I arrived first. I had already thought about the best way to address what was becoming an increasing problem of bad product knowingly being packed in boxes, but I didn't want to alienate them. I looked up and saw the owner plus his brother and his son approaching me. The way they were walking reminded me of gunslingers approaching the sheriff for a showdown in the town square. As they approached, I said jokingly, "Wow, I didn't know there would be the three of you. Here come the Hauser men to beat on me." And one of them, whom I liked a lot and who became a good friend, turned to the other and said jokingly, "We're going to need more men." They knew they were going to be able to get away with the status quo no more. They knew they had been caught. Okay? There's always a way. I love this. And I always say this. And Vanessa and me always say this. There's always a way. When you're an entrepreneur, you just can't let anything or anyone get in your way. No matter how dire the situation, you can almost always find a solution if you try hard enough. And if you've laid the right groundwork on those rare occasions when you can't find a solution, you'll find that the consequences are usually far less severe than you feared them to be. So let's say a container full of goods comes in on a holiday season, gets waterlogged and ruined. Well, that's not something you can fix. You've got 3,000 soggy units and there aren't enough hair dryers or fans in the world to dry them out. Gone is gone. But you've been wise enough to get insurance, right? So you're covered. So then what's the worst thing? You lose sales. That's a big deal. But your buyer will know that it's not your fault. You may not get the holiday placement sales results that you may not get holiday placement, which are sales results that are key. But if you've built good relationships with your buyer and you hope they will get you back on the shelves with you the next get back on the shelves with your next order, you're more likely to get a second chance. Then if you don't have a good relationship and you've suffered your setback, but you know what? Even though you've suffered a setback, yes, you can work to change things around tomorrow. So it's very, very, very important to just keep going, keep pushing through, and most importantly, getting that product out. You know, here's some to-do list when driving your business. When problems occur, think outside of the box. There's always a solution. Make the people that you work with feel valued and part of a team. That's so, so important. Show your appreciation for what they do. If you make special requests or need something in a rush, explain why so people understand why it's so important. That is really, really good. And that concludes chapter 9 of this incredible book by Lori Greiner. Definitely excited to get into chapter 10. It's actually going to be an even more juicy book because it's split into 3 parts, ladies and gentlemen. So get ready for that one. It's going to be filled with a lot of information. So get ready for that. And it's been a pleasure reading with you for chapter 9 and can't wait for all the amazing things that we get into. Chapter 10 is going to be talking about beyond brick and mortar. So everything that we've learned from, you know, driving the business and manufacturing, pricing and packaging and all of that is all going to come together in the chapter 10. So get ready for it. Stay tuned and have an amazing, amazing day.